All right, settle in. Grab an ale if you've got one. Tonight, on the Small Council Unfiltered, we're tackling a big one. A question I hear whispered in taprooms and marketplaces from the arbor to the wall. You look at the Red Keep, you see the three-headed dragon on every banner, and you think, power. You think fire and blood. You think of Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters who forged this kingdom with dragon flame. But what if I told you that right now, in this year, 209 after the conquest, House Targaryen is teetering on a knife's edge? What if I told you the crown is heavy, the treasury is light, and the royal family is a tangled mess of secrets and sorrows? Everyone thinks the dragon is strong, but if you look closely, you can see the cracks in its scales. So, the big question tonight is this: why is the House of the Dragon so damn weak? To understand the rot, we can't just look at today. We have to go back. We need to look at a chain of events, a series of disastrous kings, a catastrophic family feud, a plague from the gods themselves, and the one thing that started it all, the death of the last dragon. So, let's break it down. We're going to cover 4 key areas. 1. The original sin. The dragons are gone. How did the ultimate weapon of Targaryen power vanish, and what did that really mean? 2. The century of calamity. How a line of terrible, pious, or simply foolish kings hollowed out the crown's authority, culminating in the single most reckless act in Westerosi history. 3. The Great Wound, the Blackfire Rebellion. We'll dive deep into the civil war that tore the realm in half and created a shadow that hangs over us to this very day. 4. The Brittle Peace, the kingdom we live in now. We'll look at the current king, the spy master who truly runs things, and the deeply dysfunctional royal family that's supposed to be our future. Let's get into it. Part 1. The original sin. The dragons are gone. First, you have to understand the foundation of Targaryen power. It wasn't their silver hair or their purple eyes. It wasn't their Valyrian steel swords or their ancient name. It was one thing and one thing only: dragons. When Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros, he didn't have a massive army. He had a few thousand men. The kings of the Rock, the Reach, and the Stormlands had tens of thousands. On paper, Aegon should have been crushed. But paper doesn't stand up to fire. Aegon, Rhaenys, and Visenya had Balerion, Merexes, and Vargar. They had living, breathing, tactical weapons of mass destruction. You can't fight a dragon with swords and spears. The Field of Fire proved that. 4,000 men, including the entire line of House Gardener, burned to ash in minutes. That's how you conquer a continent, not with diplomacy, but with fear. The absolute, undeniable terror of Dragonflame. For the first 130 years of their rule, this was the Targaryen trump card. A lord gets rebellious, a dragon shows up. The faith militant causing trouble, a dragon melts their septs. The Iron Throne wasn't just a symbol of power. It was a promise of what would happen if you defied the family that had flying monsters. So, what happened? Where did they all go? The simple answer is they killed each other. About 80 years ago, we had what the Maesters call the Dance of the Dragons. A better name would be the Targaryen self-destruction. King Viserys I died, and his declared heir, his daughter Rhaenyra, was set to take the throne. But her younger half-brother, Aegon II, and his supporters decided a woman couldn't rule. They crowned him instead. What followed was the most brutal, devastating war this continent had ever seen. It wasn't like the wars we know, fought with knights and infantry. This was a war fought in the skies. Targaryen against Targaryen, dragon against dragon. And it was a slaughter. Vargar, the last of the Conqueror's great dragons, was killed. Caraxes, Syrax, Sunfire the Golden, dozens of them, big and small, were torn apart in the skies or killed on the ground. The dragon pit in King's Landing, once a majestic home for these creatures, became a tomb. By the time the war was over, the family was shattered, and only a handful of dragons were left.
And they weren't the beasts of old. The last one was a sickly, stunted green female who died during the reign of King Aegon III, the son of Rhaenyra. He was called the Dragonbane because the last dragon died on his watch. He saw his own mother eaten by his uncle's dragon, so you can't imagine he was too fond of them. And just like that, the magic was gone. The Targaryens still had the Iron Throne, they still had the name, but their ultimate weapon, the source of their divine right to rule, was a pile of bones in the Red Keep's cellar. From that moment on, they had to rule like any other king. They had to rely on armies, on the loyalty of their lords, on politics, and on money. They were no longer gods walking among men, they were just men. And as the next 100 years would prove, they weren't always very good at being men. This is the bedrock of their weakness. Everything else we're about to discuss happens because the dragons aren't there to enforce their will anymore. Without the dragons, a Targaryen king has to be strong, or smart, or loved, and gods help them if they're none of the above. Part 2. The Century of Calamity. After the dance, the Targaryens needed to rebuild their power. They needed strong, wise rulers to knit the realm back together. What they got was a mixed bag, to put it lightly. And the bad ones were spectacularly bad. Let's look at the 3 kings whose reigns directly set the stage for the mess we're in now. First, you have Daeron I, the young dragon. He came to the throne full of fire and ambition. He was only 14, but he had one goal: to do what even Aegon the Conqueror couldn't. He wanted to conquer Dorne. And to his credit, he did it. He marched his armies south, he was clever, he was bold, and he forced the Dornish to kneel. The whole realm cheered. Here was a true Targaryen, a warrior king. But conquering a place is one thing, holding it is another. The Dornish are not like the rest of us. They don't fight in open fields. They are a land of sand, snakes, and shadows. They started a brutal insurgency. They poisoned wells, ambushed patrols, and assassinated the man Daeron left in charge, the Lord of Highgarden. The war to hold Dorne was a bloody, expensive meat grinder. It cost the realm tens of thousands of lives. Some say as many as 50,000 men died in that cursed desert. That's a whole generation of soldiers gone. And for what? In the end, Daeron I himself was killed under a flag of peace, betrayed by the Dornish. His conquest collapsed. All that blood, all that gold from the royal treasury, wasted. He bought a brief, glorious victory at a catastrophic price, and it left the crown poorer and the realm full of grieving families who now hated the Dornish more than ever. He proved a Targaryen could still be a great warrior, but he also drained the kingdom's resources for nothing. Next came his brother, Baelor I, the Blessed. If Daeron was all fire, Baelor was, well, he was something else entirely. Baelor was a septon in a king's body. He was so pious it bordered on madness. His first act as king, he walked the Bonway to Dorne barefoot to make peace. He was bitten by vipers and nearly died, but he did it. He freed the Dornish hostages, including his own cousin, the future King Daeron II. This was seen by some as a noble act of peace, but to the lords who lost sons and fathers in Daeron's war, it was a slap in the face. He was forgiving the very people who had killed their kin. But that was just the start. Baelor's piety completely disconnected him from the practical needs of ruling. He emptied the treasury on charity. He'd forgive debts owed to the crown, pay for bread for every commoner in King's Landing. Noble gestures, but financially crippling. A king needs money to pay guards, to build roads, to enforce his will. Baelor was giving it all away. He locked his own 3 sisters, Dana, Rhaena, and Elena, away in a part of the Red Keep he called the Maiden Vault. Why? To keep their beauty from tempting him or other men to sin. Dana the Defiant, a wild and spirited woman who should have been making a strong political marriage, was instead a prisoner in her own home. This was not only cruel, but politically stupid. These princesses were valuable assets for forging alliances. And he tried to replace ravens with doves for carrying messages because he thought ravens were unclean. It was a disaster.
Doves are terrible at carrying messages. He appointed a stonemason and then an 8-year-old boy as High Septon because he claimed the gods spoke to him and told him to. The boy knew nothing of doctrine and was a puppet for others. Baelor the Blessed ruled with prayers and fasting, not with strength and wisdom. He weakened the crown's finances, alienated his own family, and made the faith a laughingstock. He eventually died, predictably, after one of his prolonged fasts. His reign left the crown politically and financially weaker than it had been in decades. And his piety created a backlash. The lords and ladies of the court grew tired of his fanatical devotion, which would lead them to embrace the exact opposite in the next king. And that brings us to the man who truly lit the fuse, Aegon IV, the Unworthy. After Baelor died without children, his uncle Viserys II had a brief, competent reign. But when he died, his son Aegon IV took the throne. And where Baelor was pious and chaste, Aegon was a man of boundless, monstrous appetites. For food, for drink, and most of all, for women. Aegon the Unworthy was corrupt to his very core. He was a terrible king and an even worse man. He ruled through cronies and flatterers. Competent men were dismissed from the small council and replaced with yes-men who would indulge his every whim. He'd give a lord a castle for a good joke, or grant a merchant a lucrative tax exemption if his daughter spent a night with him. Justice and good governance went out the window. He was cruel and petty. He was married to his sister, Nyarys, a gentle and pious woman he tormented his entire life. He constantly spread rumors that her son, Daeron, was actually the child of their heroic brother, Aemon the Dragon Knight. He did this just to hurt her and to cast doubt on his own true-born heir.
He even had the Dragon Knight tortured on a false accusation before he was forced to recant. And the guy who died, the Targaryen, was a man named Daemon. Daemon was the son of Aegon and his cousin, Princess Dana the Defiant, the one Baelor had locked in the Maiden Vault. He was everything his true-born half-brother Daeron was not. Daeron was a scholar, a diplomat, a thoughtful man. Daemon was a warrior. He was said to look like Aegon the Conqueror reborn. He was charismatic, strong, and skilled with every weapon. Aegon thrived on Daemon. When Daemon was 12, the king knighted him and, in a move that shocked the entire court, gave him Blackfire, the Valyrian steel sword of Aegon the Conqueror himself. This was the sword of kings. For a king to give it to his bastard son instead of his true-born heir was a message loud and clear. This one is the true heir of my spirit. By legitimizing Daemon, Aegon IV had essentially created a second Targaryen line. He had planted the seed of a civil war, watered it with his own corruption, and left his son, the good King Daeron II, to reap the whirlwind.
Not through war, but through marriage. He was already married to Princess Miriam Martell of Dorne, and he sealed the deal by marrying his own younger sister, Daenerys, not to be confused with any others, to the ruling prince of Dorne. This was a diplomatic masterpiece. He finished what Daeron I started, but without shedding a drop of blood. But many lords in the Reach and the Stormlands hated it. These were the men who had fought and died in Daeron I's war. They saw the Dornish as treacherous enemies, not fellow subjects. And now, under Daeron II, they saw Dornish lords at court. They heard Dornish accents in the Red Keep. They saw the king favoring Dornish customs and laws. They felt like their culture, their Andal and First Men traditions were being replaced. And all this time, Daemon, who now called himself Daemon Blackfire after the sword, was growing in power and influence. The resentful lords began to flock to him. They looked at the scholarly Daeron with his Dornish wife and his books, and then they looked at Daemon, the perfect image of a warrior king wielding the conqueror's sword. The old rumors that Aegon IV had started, that Daeron was not his true son, began to circulate again. They whispered, "Daeron is the son of the Dragon Knight. Daemon is Aegon's true son in body and spirit. He holds the sword. He should be king." This festered for over a decade. On one side, you had the Reds, loyal to King Daeron II and the Red Targaryen dragon. On the other, you had the Blacks, who supported Daemon Blackfire and his new personal sigil, a black three-headed dragon on a red field. The realm was split down the middle. It was about more than just who should be king. It was a culture war. It was the old guard, the martial lords of the Marches and the Reach, against the new Targaryen court with its Dornish influence, its maesters and its diplomats. It was about ambition. Younger sons, landless knights, and lords who felt overlooked by Daeron saw a chance for glory and land by backing a new king. It was a family feud on a grand scale. Another of Aegon IV's great bastards, a bitter and humorless warrior named Aegor Rivers, known as Bittersteel, was Daemon's biggest supporter. He hated his half-brother, another great bastard named Brynden Rivers, or Bloodraven, who was fiercely loyal to Daeron. Their personal rivalry fueled the entire conflict.
Finally, about 13 years ago, in the year 196, Daemon Blackfyre declared himself the true king and called his banners. The first Blackfyre rebellion began. The war lasted about a year, but it was savage. It tore the 7 kingdoms apart. Houses were split, brother fighting brother, father fighting son. It all came to a head at the Battle of the Red Grass Field. It was one of the largest, most brutal battles in Westerosi history. Tens of thousands fought on each side. Daemon Blackfyre was a force of nature on the battlefield, cutting through Daeron's forces. He faced off against the royal vanguard and was said to be winning the day. But Bloodraven, the king's loyal spy master and a deadly archer, had taken his personal guard, the Raven's Teeth, to a ridge overlooking the battlefield. From there, they rained down arrows on Daemon and his command. An arrow struck Daemon's eldest son, Aegon. As Daemon held his dying son in his arms, Bloodraven's archers shot him down as well, piercing him with 7 arrows. Then they killed his other son, Aemon. The death of Daemon Blackfyre broke the rebellion. The rebel army shattered. Bittersteel managed to fight his way out, taking Daemon's surviving sons and the sword Blackfyre with him, and fled across the narrow sea into exile. The rebellion was over. Daeron II had won, but the cost was staggering. A generation of nobles was dead. Over 10,000 knights and lords died on the Red Grass Field alone. Almost every great house in the realm lost someone. The realm was deeply divided. The wounds from this war did not heal. Families that fought for the Black Dragon were stripped of lands and titles, creating lasting bitterness. Families that fought for the Red Dragon were rewarded, creating jealousy. And the threat was not gone. This is the most important part. Bittersteel and Daemon's sons were alive and well in Essos. They founded a sellsword company, the Golden Company, made up of exiled Westerosi knights and their descendants.
Their entire purpose, their founding creed, is to one day return to Westeros and place a Blackfyre on the Iron Throne. So the Blackfyre Rebellion isn't a closed chapter in a history book. It's a wound that never stopped bleeding. Every few years, there are rumors of a new Blackfyre landing. Every lord who feels slighted by the crown is a potential Blackfyre sympathizer. The war may have ended on the battlefield, but it continued in the shadows. A cold war of spies, assassins, and paranoia. And that paranoia brings us to the kingdom we live in today. The victory at Redgrass Field should have secured the Targaryen line for a century. It didn't. The years that followed were plagued by disaster, creating the fragile, tense realm that Sir Arlen of Pennytree and his squire are walking through. First came the Great Spring Sickness. About 2 years after we're told our story starts, in 209 AC, a terrible plague swept across Westeros. It started in King's Landing and spread like wildfire. It was devastating, one of the worst plagues in memory. It killed the old and the young, the rich and the poor. Tens of thousands died. King's Landing became a charnel house. The plague didn't just kill common folk, it struck the heart of the royal family. The good King Daeron II, the man who held the realm together, caught the plague and died. His heir, the valiant Prince Baelor Breakspear, a man loved by all, a hero of the Blackfyre Rebellion, and the best hope for the future, died at the tourney at Ashford after a trial by 7, a tragedy in itself. But his 2 young sons, Valar and Mataris, were taken by the plague shortly after. In the span of a year, the king was dead, his heir was dead, and his heir's heirs were dead. The line of succession was shattered. The throne passed to Daeron's second son, Ares the First. This brings us to our current king, Ares, the bookworm. Ares the First is not a bad man. By all accounts, he's quiet, scholarly, and prefers reading ancient prophecies to actually ruling. He has no interest in jousting or hunting or leading armies. He's not a warrior. He's not a statesman. He leaves the day-to-day business of running the 7 kingdoms to his hand. And who is his hand? The same man who won the war for his father, Brindam Rivers, Bloodraven. Bloodraven is now the most powerful man in Westeros, and he rules not through love or loyalty, but through fear. He's known as the Lord Bloodraven, an albino with skin pale as bone, long white hair, and a single red eye. He lost the other fighting Bittersteel. He has a red birthmark on his face that is said to look like a raven drinking blood. He is a chilling figure. He's also a sorcerer, or so the whispers say. And he's a kinslayer. He killed his half-brother Daemon Blackfyre and his sons, a terrible sin in the eyes of gods and men. But his true power comes from his network of spies. The saying at court is 1,000 eyes and one. Bloodraven sees everything. He hears every whisper in every tavern, every secret told in every bedchamber. He uses this information to crush dissent before it can even begin. A lord starts talking about Blackfyre sympathies, he's arrested for treason. A merchant is hiding gold from the crown, his business is ruined. This creates a kind of peace, yes, a brittle peace. It's a peace built on paranoia. No one trusts anyone because anyone could be one of Bloodraven's spies. The lords of the realm don't follow King Ares out of respect. They obey Bloodraven out of fear. This is not a strong foundation for a kingdom. It's a pressure cooker. And the Blackfyres across the sea are just waiting for it to explode. On top of all this, the realm is physically suffering. The great spring sickness was followed by a long, brutal summer drought. Crops are failing, food is scarce, the small folk are starving. And when people are hungry and desperate, they get angry. They start to think that maybe a new king, a Blackfyre king, wouldn't be so bad after all. So, to recap the current situation, we have a king who doesn't rule, a spy master who rules through fear, a populace weakened by plague and famine, and a constant simmering threat of another civil war from across the sea. This is the weak, paranoid, and miserable Westeros we find ourselves in. But the weakness doesn't stop at the top.
It runs deep, right into the heart of the next generation of the royal family. If the kingdom is to have any hope, it needs a strong future. It needs a clear line of succession with princes who are noble, just, and respected. House Targaryen does not have that right now. The family is a dysfunctional, tragic mess. With King Ares I having no children, the heir to the Iron Throne is his younger brother, the 4th son of Daeron II, Prince Maekar. Maekar is a hard man, stern, proud, and easily angered. He's a capable battle commander, but he's not a politician. He's not charismatic. He lives in the shadow of his older brother, the deceased Baelor Breakspear, who everyone loved. Maekar is respected for his strength, but feared for his temper. He's not a man who inspires loyalty or affection. He's a bitter 4th son who, by a string of tragedies, is now one step away from the throne. But the real problem lies with Maekar's own sons. These are the princes who will one day rule us, and they are a gallery of disasters. First, there's the eldest, Daeron. They call him Daeron the Drunken. He is plagued by prophetic dreams, a Targaryen trait, but he drowns them in wine. He's unreliable, often lewd, and a disappointment to his stern father. He's more interested in the bottom of a wine cup than in his duties as a prince. Second, and far more terrifying, is Aerion. They call him Aerion Brightflame. He is cruelty and arrogance given human form. He's a sadist who enjoys inflicting pain on others. He's convinced that his Targaryen blood makes him a literal dragon, a higher form of being. There's a story that he once forced his younger brother Aegon to drink a cup of wildfire, telling him it would turn him into a dragon. The boy was nearly killed. Aerion is not just a bad prince, he's a monster. The thought of him on the Iron Throne is a nightmare that keeps half the lords of Westeros awake at night. Third is Aemon. Aemon is quiet, intelligent, and kind. He could have been a great prince, a voice of reason. But his father, Maekar, seeing no greatness in him and despairing of his other sons, sent him to the citadel to become a maester. A maester serves, he does not rule. He forges a chain and forswears all titles and inheritance. Aemon is effectively removed from the line of succession. A great mind wasted. And last, there's the youngest, Aegon, nicknamed Egg. He is the boy we know is squiring for Sir Duncan the Tall. Because he's the fourth son of a fourth son, no one pays him much mind. He's seen as insignificant. His father sent him away to squire at Summerhall, and now he's roaming the roads with a hedge knight, his head shaved to hide his silver hair. He's a nobody, a footnote in the royal line. So, look at that lineup. A drunkard, a psychopath, a maester, and a nobody. This is the future of House Targaryen. There is no Baelor Breakspear to rally behind. There is no shining beacon of hope for the next generation. The family is rife with cruelty, madness, and disappointment. The lords of the realm look at this collection of princes, and they have to be thinking, is this really the best we can do? Wouldn't a Blackfire, any Blackfire, be better than Aerion Brightflame? So, why is House Targaryen so weak? It's not one single reason. It's a perfect storm of a century of disasters, one compounding the other. They lost their dragons. Their ultimate power, the foundation of their dynasty, is gone. They are mere mortals now, subject to the same rules as everyone else. They had a succession of bad or incompetent kings. Daeron I wasted the realm's strength on a pointless war. Baelor I weakened the crown with his piety. And Aegon IV's corruption and recklessness directly created the single greatest threat to their rule. They suffered a devastating civil war. The Blackfire Rebellion bled the kingdom dry, killed a generation, and created a permanent enemy in exile that works day and night to undermine the Iron Throne. The war never truly ended. They were decimated by plague and natural disaster. The Great Spring Sickness killed the good king and his strong heirs, throwing the succession into chaos and leaving the realm in the hands of a weak, disinterested scholar. and they are ruled by fear, not love. The current regime is run by a terrifying spy master.
The peace he maintains is brittle and based on paranoia, creating resentment that bubbles just beneath the surface. And finally, their own family is a rotting mess. The current generation of princes is a collection of drunks, monsters, and forgotten children. There is no clear, inspiring leader on the horizon to unite the realm and lead it out of the darkness. The Targaryen dragon still sits on the Iron Throne, but its wings are clipped, its fire is low, and its children are fighting each other in the nest. So when you're out there on the road and you see the banners with the three-headed dragon, don't just see power. See the fragility. See the cracks in the armor. Understand that the entire 7 kingdoms is a keg of black powder, and it wouldn't take much more than a single spark to set the whole thing off again. The peace is an illusion, and everyone from the highest lord to the lowest hedge knight is just trying to survive until it breaks. That's all for tonight. Stay safe and keep your ears open.